Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bankroll Burners, the poker podcast for players who can't stop getting it in bad. I'm Mike.
And I'm Josh.
And we are here, as always, bringing you some hands that we played in the past week that we played badly. And then we're going to talk about how we could have played them better, maybe learn something from each other, probably reinforce our own failings, all that good stuff. And we appreciate that you're along for the ride.
Yeah, I know I had a session this week where I played quite badly. I made a lot of value hands and didn't get the most value, and then probably played some other hands wrong, and was really kicking myself by the end of the night. But hey, that's what. At least I got some. Let me tell you, that means I got some good podcast hands.
Yeah, that's fair. That's the point. No, it's funny when you're sitting at a table, like I'll have a session sometimes where like 3 hours or 4 hours will go by and I'm like, man, I haven't had a single podcast hand. This sucks. So my motivations while playing have definitely shifted a little bit.
Man, yeah. So it's definitely one of those interesting times where I'm like, yeah, that hand can go on the podcast, and then sometimes I'll have a hand where I'm like, wow, this hand is just like such a complete mess that I'm just going to need to text Mike about it right now and not save it for the podcast. It's really, I skip both of those.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. And before we get started though, I do want to shout out the best tweet from poker Twitter this week from Wesley, the Crypto Wesley, the gentleman who plays on the highest stakes streams of Hustler Casino Live. He hit us yesterday morning with, sometimes poker gives me more dopamine and endorphin than sex.
And in the midst of all this nonsense on poker Twitter, it's nice to see some basic shit posting, isn't it?
It's, all I'm going to say is I think we can all relate to Wesley here. And the autism of poker nerds shines through once more. So
yeah, and I'm always reminded whenever I play a live session. To your point of podcast hands, I'm always reminded of the quote: "Poker is eons of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror."
Ooh, that's a good one.
Which is really how I feel. I'm like, yep, Jack 4 offsuit again. I'm not Robbie, so I'm not going to play this hand.
All right, well, let's get into it.
I'll start. I played a 1-3 session earlier this week at Encore Boston Harbor. I was just listening, actually, as luck would have it, the Cross Life Poker video recently had a caller from Encore Boston Harbor, and it sounds like they're moving their rake structure in the right direction in some ways. They're moving to a timed rate game at the higher echelons of play. Not that will really ever matter to me. But, and they've done other things like removing the promos, so they removed that extra like $1 or $2 drop. And so now it's only 10% up to $10 for 1-3 and 2-5. And then I guess it's timed for 5-10 and above.
Well, yeah, and it's actually my local room, Best Bet Orange Park, also is they recently switched to a time rate game for the 5-10, which has made it way more popular, which has been great for me in 2-5 because all the good players now play 5-10. So the 2-5 game has gotten softer.
Well, when time for you to move up to 5-10, huh?
Or to 2-5. Yeah. Or you think I should move to 5-10? God, no.
Hey, it might be a good shot to take after some big wins.
Yeah, perhaps if I'm, feeling myself. But it's interesting. That game is insane now because they have like straddle from any position, bomb pot every time someone sneezes. Like, it's just
it's like, someone walked by our table, bomb pot.
Yeah, seriously, that's what it seems like is going on over there usually. So
okay, well, cool. Well, anyway, at 1-3 Encore Boston Harbor, it was a pretty good game. I'd have to say, a couple folks who knew what they were doing, a lot more folks that didn't so much. They were there for fun. Great players to play against. Really friendly table, as it usually is at Encore. Usually, you have a pretty good time interacting with the folks at the table. In this hand, we're going to be about $400 effective. So 130 big blinds. I'd say the straddle was on about half the time in this game. It was not in this particular hand. Nothing like an enforced straddle. Just a couple guys were doing it. When they threw it on, I was happy to throw it on, keep it going, entice some action. Didn't need it. Very action-heavy table. But in this particular hand, I'm going to be in the low jack. with 2 black queens. And the action is going to fold around to me, which is great. I'm going to open it up to 15, as I often do with pocket queens. And the next to act player in the hijack is going to make the call. And the big blind is going to make the call as well. So I open to 15. The hijack calls and the big blind calls. The hijack, this was pretty early in the night, but the hijack was definitely the best player at the table. He definitely knew what he was doing. He was like, he said some weird things about like solvers and analyzing other people's play when he lost to another player flatting his open with kings. And was like, I wonder if it's ever correct to flat kings there. And I just wanted to tell him like, no, it is not, but like, don't tap the glass.
Never comment negatively on bad play at a poker table. For Christ's sakes, people, don't do it, man. It's like the most negative EV behavior possible.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it is what it is. But he was clearly a thinking player. Definitely, kind of understood what he was doing, which is great. I mean, it was really interesting to play alongside him, see some of the plays he was making. He seemed like, I think he usually played 2-5, and there were a couple 2-5 people who sat down at our table because apparently the 2-5 game sucked on this particular night. But anyway, we're off 3 ways to a flop with about 45 in the pot. The flop is going to come decent. It comes 8 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, deuce of hearts. So 8-6 deuce with 2 diamonds. I think this flop is good enough to c-bet. I don't think it's a fantastic board, but I mean, it's pretty good. There's not, there's obviously no straights possible. It would be a pretty loose 2-pair combo, and plenty of flush and straight draws to get value from.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one of those boards like, I mean, yeah, you do have a competent player behind you who may, try to pull some moves with a draw. Although, frankly, he shouldn't have, I mean, if he's a decent player like you say, and he's just calling from right behind you, he shouldn't really connect with this board much. He should have like, I mean, unless he has a set, right? He could that'd be the main way he would connect with this board. He could definitely call with like 8-6s, hands like that. He shouldn't really be calling with suited connectors. He might be. I don't know how good he is, but
he probably was calling with some suited connectors, and I would say he was. I'd also say the players behind him were not the types that were going to bump it up loosely, so he may have felt a little more emboldened to call with marginal hands occasionally. But of course, we would typically prefer 3-betting in these spots. And you never really want to call too much from the hijack, unless you have. I mean, maybe if he has a hand like pocket 9s or 8s or something like that.
No, I don't think calling is like terrible necessarily. I'm just saying like the appropriate calling range for him shouldn't really be connecting with this board.
Yeah, so anyway, the big blind checks to me. I put out a bet of 30. I decided to size up a bit just because it is not the most favorable board for me, and so I want to maybe size up a titch.
Okay. I don't know that I necessarily would agree with that, but okay, you size up.
And I immediately get raised to 100 by the hijack. So I bet 30. He raises to 100. The big blind folds. And it's back on me. What do you think here? Is this just a straightforward call? Do you think there's any merit to sort of trying to pile the money in? 100 something big blinds deep, unblocking diamonds.
I don't. He makes it 100. So if you call, the pot's gonna be 250 roughly, and you're gonna have like 270 behind. So you have like a pot-sized bet left.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The problem is, like, I don't really know what his bluffs are here. Like he has 8s and 6s for like thick value. He should never be doing this with like pair plus straight draw, if he even. Well, that's not even possible. So never mind. But he should never be doing this with like just one pair. Like
do you think he's ever making like a thin value raise with like 10s or 9s?
Yeah, it's possible.
That's the only really like thin value hand I see, right? Maybe Like, you're right. He probably shouldn't be doing this with like 9-8 suited or something
or
like
ace
that.
8 suited.
Right. Like maybe sometimes you can make a thin value raise with those. I mean, I definitely did have a pretty aggressive image. Was betting a lot of flops, raising a lot. So possible that he was just trying to kind of go for some thin value, trying to get value from me. But I don't know. I kind of agree. But I mean, if I jam, like, am I going to get called by flush draws or pocket nines?
Right.
Probably not if he's like pretty good, right?
Right. I mean, well, if you jam here, he has the correct odds to call with a flush draw, I believe.
Probably. I mean, yeah.
He'll get 2-1, so he will. He could call. You could get called by a flush draw here, and those are his logical bluffs, I guess. Are flush draws like if he just flatting you with ace x of diamonds does make sense from that's like one of the more logical types of hands. Maybe he doesn't really want to 3-bet you there, given your depth, so he just wants to flat with ace x of diamonds.
I mean, but we are kind of flipping with ace x of diamonds specifically. We're not really. I mean, we're not particularly ahead against ace x of diamonds holding.
Sure. I guess, I don't know. Like, ideally, you want to get the money in, I guess, against a worse flush draw than that. It's certainly going to be awkward on the turn if you check and he shoves turn like on a blank.
I'd probably have to call off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not calling with queens, what are you calling with? Like,
especially black queens. Like, if I have a diamond and the turn comes a brick, maybe I can fold, although there shouldn't be that many queen x of diamonds in his range. He probably could have like queen jack or queen 10 or something like that of diamonds. So I agree. I think if the turn came a brick and if I just call, turn comes a brick and he jams, I think I'm pretty much, I have to call off. But, is there some merit to sort of just taking that aggression, taking that kind of into my own hands? Now, of course, the downside is, if we fold out like one of those thin value raises, that's going to be not, very bad for us.
Yeah. I think so. I guess I'm just not inclined to pile money into this pot. I think there's a reasonable chance we're beat. And the only hands that we want to get called by are like middling flush draws, which he shouldn't really have that many of, just flatting you out of the hijack. So.
Yeah, and I basically eventually I kind of go back and forth and elect to just call. I kind of felt the same way. I was really thinking like, I don't know. I kind of think that 3-bet shoving can't be that bad. Like, given that I made it, I mean, I guess it was just a single raise pot, but it was multi-way. Stacking off for 100 and something big blinds can't be like 130 big blinds with an overpair and a draw heavy board probably can't be bad. But, again, I feel like a good point against it is that really we're not even ahead of ace x of diamonds, particularly.
Which is his most likely bluff here.
Yeah, and he might fold a 9s or 10s if he's got those sort of hands, which
would be a disaster, because those are hands we should be able to get value from on a river, even if the turn goes check. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just call. So there's, as you said, there's a 245 in the pot. We've got about 285 behind, so just over a pot-sized bet. And the turn is now going to come a very bad card for us. It's the 5 of diamonds. So, I'm kind of thinking, wow, like, this card's really bad. I can definitely check, and I think we can pretty comfortably we can probably comfortably check fold this card.
I think so. I mean, at this point, especially if you were to rip it, like, we just want to have a diamond.
Yeah, and it's like he probably wouldn't be doing that with, like, 9s or 10s unless he's, like, turning it into a bluff, which is, like...
Right, I think
sense.
If this could go check, and then I still think there's a possibility of getting some thin value on the river.
Yeah, I agree. That was pretty much my plan. If it went check, and it does. So I check, fully prepared to fold, and the turn goes check. So very, very happy with that, and I was kind of thinking about going for some thin value.
I want to say he can still be pretty nutted here. When you raise flop, you are supposed to have some turn checkbacks. So he can definitely have like pocket 9s pocket 8 still.
And especially with only a pot size bet behind, if he's not too scared, and even if he's got like the nut flush, like there's not much to protect against with the nut flush if he wants to play deceptively.
Sure.
Right? Like I probably shouldn't especially once I flat call. I mean, I probably shouldn't have like 8s and 6s and deuces that much. So I think it's I see your point, and I definitely, but on a brick turn, I'm probably or on a brick river, I'm probably still planning on betting small. Probably not jamming. Well, I mean, I don't know. On a brick river, do you think we should be jamming or looking for maybe betting $80 and bet folding?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like, are you really gonna bet fold that river? And I mean, maybe
we do have enough behind to bet fold. Like if we bet 80 into 250 and he jams, then we need to call like 200 to win 600. Like we're getting 3-1, but it's hard to find bluffs.
Right, and even if you can find bluffs, like you unblock all of them. Or sorry, you're not sorry, you're not unblocking them. But what I'm saying is you are not blocking his thick value.
Right.
Rather.
Exactly. So
is what I meant to say. So yeah, I don't know. I think you could probably bet fold on a brick, but I'm guessing it doesn't come a brick.
The turn is not a brick. I mean, it's not a super. I mean, it's an interesting card. It's the 9 of hearts, so it adds a one-liner to a 7. The board is now 8 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, deuce of hearts, 5 of diamonds, 9 of hearts for anyone who's just listening and not able to see the visuals. So there's a one-liner to a 7 as well as 3 to a flush. We're holding black queens. And I think this card, I mean, I don't know that it makes that much sense for me to go for thin value on this card when like even his thin value raises that were like, pocket 9s are now beating me.
Yeah. Yeah, what are we trying to get called by?
So maybe we can check and call a small bet and fold to a big bet, or even just fold regardless.
Definitely getting a little hairy. I mean, is it possible? Like, I guess like ace-8, which we talked about earlier. Like maybe he has ace-8 here. Like that's the only hand we could maybe get some value from if he has it. Other than that, like what?
Yeah, even pocket 10s, I suspect he'd be 3-betting the majority of the time because I do think this guy would be doing that.
Yeah, you would think.
And I opened from the low jack. It's not like I opened from under the gun, so a little bit more playability for those sort of 3-betting hands. So, what hands is he flat calling with and then raising the flop? A lot of flush draws. Probably not that many 8s, but maybe some. And then like pocket 9s or then that's. I mean, I was gonna say pocket 7s, but really he shouldn't have. It would be tough for him to have a 7 here.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens?
So I do decide to check, and my plan is sort of, if he does kind of go for some thin value himself, I think I can comfortably call because I have kind of under-rep my hand, and if I'd just be getting really good odds. But he does not bet small; he jams. So I kind of do think about it for a while, kind of run through all the different hands he can have because it is interesting for him to check back the turn and then jam river. But I kind of come to the conclusion that given it's only a little bit more than pot, that he does have room to sort of slow play the nutted hands.
Yeah, I also think, like, I'll be honest, like, I actually think he can do this with 2 pair.
Right.
So, like, if you had that whole slew of hands that were just dead to, like, I mean, what would you want? If you were going to call here, I mean, obviously you would call with a straight, not that you have that many straights. You would call with a straight. I think you would. I'm guessing you would be leading the river with a flush, so you probably don't have any flushes.
How would you play aces with the ace of diamonds?
I might jam flop.
Yeah, well, but we're unblocking. We'd be unblocking all of his bluff. I mean, we'd be blocking all his bluffs if we had aces with the ace of diamonds.
Yeah, I guess. Well,
like if he raises the flop and we have aces with the ace of diamonds, we feel kind of like it's interesting because we're blocking. Like we have the additional backdoor equity of having the ace of diamonds. And we're blocking all his bluffs, so there's a little less protection that we need.
Right, I guess, yeah, I don't know. Aces the ace of diamonds is interesting, I don't know.
Like, maybe maybe this would be a candidate to check call the river. But...
Yeah, I mean, I think you would, yeah, you might take aces with the ace of diamonds this way. I don't know, I just think you, like, probably have some better hands to call with here at the end of the day, like, I guess you don't really have that many.
I mean, I can have pocket 9s.
Yeah, sure.
We'd probably play pocket 9s in a similar way.
And we can, I mean, also we could have an overpair with a diamond, like all of the overpairs with a diamond.
Yeah,
so,
and this really, again, this is This kind of brings me back to the flop where I'm thinking, if I had aces with like red aces, then I'd be not wanting to jam. So does that mean that I should be taking like black queens for a 3-bet jam? Because there's a lot more protection that you like. There's a lot more things to protect against.
You could also just not have a 3-bet jamming range on the flop.
That's true. I mean, it's not a super favorable board for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that you have better hands to call with here, so I would fold.
Cool. Yeah, I do fold. And Villain shows me one card, which is a great card for him to show me, which is he lets me pick one, and I'm very glad that I picked the one that I did, because he flips over the 9 of diamonds. So I would say I was, there is like no hand that I can think of that I was beating on the river.
Yeah, I think you made a good laydown.
Right, either he drilled the flush, or he drilled a set or 2 pair. So that was a really nice to see that card revealed. But was just really interested in your thoughts on the flop and how the board.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I think that probably jamming flop, for all the reasons we discussed earlier, is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'll comment like aces with the ace of diamonds. Would you jam the flop? Like, what are we getting called by? Probably like 9s, 10s. With a diamond might call.
Yeah, I mean,
without a diamond, or actually rather without a diamond.
I hope so. But again, I think that's kind of what we discussed, is that if we 3-bet the flop, are those hands calling?
Right.
From many players in this game, like snap calling, but from this player, I mean, he could probably just make a fold.
Well, the problem is like, yeah, I don't know.
Like, I agree. 3-betting that is just like, I don't know. Like, we're not 3-betting like ace x of diamonds probably. Like maybe 10-9. Maybe we're 3-betting 10-9 of diamonds.
Sure.
As a bluff, but that's like barely a bluff, and it's,
I also like. There's also. I don't know that you really need a 3-betting range, just given stack sizes. I just don't think it's necessary. So
yeah,
all right.
I agree. There was obviously plenty of room for all the money to go in if the board had run out a little bit cleaner. So that's life. Not a pretty run out, but that's how it goes with overpairs. So why don't we move on to your hand?
Yeah. So I got a hand here. That this is like I don't know. This was like, I'm not pleased with my play here. And I think it's one thing I've been trying to think about more is like better hands to call. Like, what do I have better hands to call with or not in a situation? And this was, I think, perhaps one of those times where I just forgot that is something you're supposed to think about. So,
and is this a 2-5 game?
This is 2-5. The straddle was on intermittently, and this is the straddle is on 2-5 10.
Cool.
And we are 6-handed right now in this game, and we're 285 effective with the villain. He was rather short. So, I mean, we're only 28 bigs.
Yeah.
I guess, with the straddle. And I have King of Spades, King of Diamonds. And I am in the big blind. And the low jack limps. The small blind, who is the main villain in the hand, limps. And this guy had been limp calling with anything. He almost never limp folded.
Great.
He was I don't know. He was sort of like a pretty typical passive live player. I think I'd seen him bluff once, run a bluff, but pretty much a typical passive live player. He did once like call someone's pre-flop jam for like $80, which obviously is not a large jam at 2-5, but he did call like an $80 pre-flop jam with deuce 4 suited and flopped a flush. It was pretty funny. So
he really wanted to call and see some flops.
Yes, he did. So
sounds like a great spot for a nice fat raise.
I make it $50, and the low jack folds, and this guy calls.
Okay.
And
straddle folds, I assume, so we're heads up.
Yes, we're heads up. Heads up, we're 120 in the pot.
Yeah,
something like that. The flop is 10 of spades, 8 of spades, 6 of hearts.
10 of spades, 8 of spades, 6 of hearts. We've got the king of spades, but overall, it's kind of similar board to last hand.
Yeah. And, he checks to me, and I don't know. Do we see bet here?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're this shallow, we just kind of, we have an overpair. We're 28 big blinds. I don't see how we could avoid. Like, I think we just have to play for stacks.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the money's gonna go in if I want it to. I'm just wondering, like, is this a decent board to check back on? Maybe to induce something from villain. Like, we are blocking flush draws, so it's less likely he's like gonna catch something.
That's true, but I just think given how shallow we are, like, we're going to get value. We're never going to fold out his worst value. Like, if he's got a 10, like, he's probably going to stack off.
Right, for sure.
And if he's got a spade draw, which, we do have the king of spades, but obviously, especially from a player of this sort of limp call nature, the cards that are suited are not necessarily relevant as long as they're suited. So there are certainly a lot of spade draws in his range.
I got you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the player who called a jam with deuce 4 suited, so he's probably happy to play a whole lot of spades.
Yep, you're not wrong. So I do see bet. I make it 35, and he calls.
And he calls. Okay, this actually kind of does set up a turn jam, right? Where the pot is 190, and we're gonna have 200 behind after this.
Yes, which is... So I'm sorry. I have a typo here. We're 385 effective with the villain. I apologize. We're 380. We started the hand 385 effective.
Okay.
So it will not... Yeah, because I was like, that doesn't sound right. So it's not we do not have a pot. We have more than a pot size bet.
Okay, so do you think there's any merit to kind of betting bigger and just, like, jamming turns?
Yeah. I actually think I think there is. I think if I had, taken that into consideration. So, we start 385 effective. We've each put 50 in, so we're at like 335. The pot is 120. We want to put in what would we want to put in to leave a pot size bet left on the turn?
Like 70.
Yeah.
I think would do it just about.
Yeah. I think that's probably better. Yes, I think that would have been a much... I really butchered this hand, and I think that would have been a much wiser move right there.
I don't mind betting larger on this flop in general either, just because there is a lot to protect against. We have a very strong hand, like also with some backdoor equity. So yeah. And I mean, when we're short stacked, I think it is definitely different. Like if you look at my hand, where we kind of talked about the optics of and I mean it was multi-way, but it's kind of interesting when we think about in this hand it's just so short. It's like you just want to put the money in with an overpair versus like stacking off for 120 big blinds with an overpair. Probably not ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely should have bet larger, but I did not. The villain calls,
and it probably can't be bad. There's another spot where it's probably fine to bet small and just like kind of play a 3-street game, but then we do run the risk of kind of running into a nasty board.
Right. Well, that isn't exactly what happens. So the turn is the 10 of clubs, so it pairs the top card.
Okay.
And villain thinks for like 3 seconds and then leads for 90.
Okay.
So what do you do in response to this lead?
Well, I'm not folding. I probably just want to call. Like, I don't know, if this, I guess this villain is not super bluffy, but I mean he might be trying to just like buy a cheap card with a flush draw, which like is okay, because I mean he could also lead like a 10 a decent amount of the time, I think. So
yeah, I mean I think he can have a 10 here. That was what I was thinking in game. I was like, I could, he can have a 10.
He can he can definitely have a 10. Yes, I'm not trying to say that he can't have a 10, but I mean I don't want to fold here, but I think like jamming over it might be an overplay.
Yeah, I don't really know what we get called by that's worse if we jam.
Well, I mean it would pretty much be like if he is like kind of trying to buy a cheap river with a flush draw that's not going to pay us off if they miss. But, maybe because we have, so maybe if we have kings with that, like if we don't have a spade, maybe we can jam. Because it waits.
Try to get called by those flush draws. Yeah, I think that's fair.
But I don't even know if we should jam. I mean, this is where, this is really where the bankroll burning comes in is, this is like not backed up. This is not backed up by a solver. This is like me just thinking out. This is us thinking out loud. Like
Yeah, I don't know what's appropriate here.
Any listeners who have played who have plugged this situation into a solver or have better poker knowledge than we do, please feel free to let us know what you would have done.
Absolutely. If you would jam with kings with no spade, hit the like button. And if you wouldn't jam, if you would simply call, leave a comment.
And still press the like button.
Yeah. So anyway, I just call.
I'm definitely happy calling. I mean, I guess the issue is like what now? So now that adds like 180. So there's 370 in the pot, and there's only like 200 behind. So we have like a half pot size bet. So, are we just committed to calling off any non-spade river?
Well, that's a good question. The river is the 4 of hearts.
That's a bricky brick.
And the villain jams.
I guess it's not a brick. Sorry to whoever inevitably comments. 5-7 got there. You're right. It's not a brick.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. So villain jams.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really. I think I don't necessarily feel like we should be in the habit of folding over pairs in a 35 big blinds deep, 40 big blinds deep. But I mean, if there is a time to do it, I mean, this villain doesn't sound like he's very aggressive. We have a spade. The top card pairing, 10x hands definitely represent a strong portion of his flop calling range. So, I mean, if there was a time to make a big laydown shallow, this would probably be a good candidate for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't think about this in game, but after the fact, I was thinking about better hands to call with, worse hands to call with. I would say better hands to call with would obviously be no spade. So there's that. I think kings with a spade is better than aces with a spade.
Yeah, because ace x of spades is a bigger portion of his spade range than king x.
Yeah, so and people do love to limp call with ace deuce of spades.
Yep.
So,
but would this player be playing this way with ace deuce of spades? Do you think he would commit to the final jam?
He might. Like I said, I'd seen him bluff once. At least I think I had. I don't know. I'd seen him do some wacky shit. I think it's. I don't remember exactly what he had done. I just remember there were 1 or 2 spots before this where I was like, "Huh, I did not expect that." So, I don't know. I think so. I think better hands to call with would be no spade hands. Over pairs with no spade. Obviously a 10 myself, which I would play the same way. But
well, we might jam the turn a lot with 10s, right?
With a 10? I don't think so. I think I'd rather let him, because I think I'd rather let him keep doing it, keep betting. I don't know, because I think it's just much more. If I have a 10, I guess bluffs are a much bigger part of his range.
Yeah, but I don't think he's at folding. But again, I think this is a spot where I don't think he's gonna fold spade draws. He's I would think that the average live villain is not gonna fold a spade draw when you jam for 200 more into a pot of 400.
That's possible. Yeah, although perhaps they should, depending on the spade.
Oh yeah, no, I do it. I'm not saying that. I mean, you're probably not quite getting the direct odds with when cards to come.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would probably be doing a lot of jamming with the 10 on the turn just for that reason, because that lead, especially with a good 10, ace 10.
Right, but we could have worse 10s like jack 10, queen 10, whatever, where we might just call. And those would be better hands to call off the river here with. But then, worse hands to call, I mean, definitely, jacks is worse because we're blocking some of the straight draws. Nines, we could get here with 9s. That's a much worse hand to call with. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, we're getting 3-1. So it's we really, and if he's bluffing here, MDF, we have to defend with our best third. He's betting half pot, so we have to defend with our best top 2/3 of hands we get here with.
Right.
And kings even with a spade, I think should be in the top 2/3 of the hands we get here with.
Yeah, and I think I'm just, again, like I said, I'm just kind of happy calling with an overpair that the live spaz factor too. When we're getting such a big, when we're getting a great price against a player who probably has bluffs and might have some non-intuitive bluffs that he's just kind of fired the turn and decided to shove river. it does happen with like ABC players, and I've probably done it too. Just so there is that factor where it's like we really it can't be bad to call with kings here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I mean I fold ultimately is what I do, and Villain pretty proudly shows king of clubs, queen of spades.
Which is just, I mean, right? That's just a hand that he should never be leading turn.
Right, it's just a total spaz, but it's a bluff. It's not a spaz, it's a bluff.
So right. But is it like right? But that's the sort of hand that I was talking about. That's just kind of like a no equity bluff that he did. He played a little bit unconventionally.
Yeah. No. So I really think like this is the lesson here. It's like you really got to remember to think about this stuff in game. Like I think like I made a very exploitable fold, and the reason I did in the game, I was like, well, live players don't bluff on the river much, so I guess I'm going to fold. That was the thought process.
And I would say, we talk a lot about MDF on this podcast, but I think MDF is really sort of a guideline that, especially live, you really don't need to. You really shouldn't follow against most players, as you've said. Like if there are certain players who even if they jam the river and you're getting this price, you're like, yep, I am never good here. Like it doesn't matter what's in your top X% if you know that a player is never jamming as a bluff.
Absolutely. It's like walking that balance is really hard, I think. And I think if I had sat and said what better hands, what worse hands do I have to call here with, I would have come to the conclusion that it was a correct call, but I didn't do that in game, and so I got owned.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I mean, there are definitely always those zero equity bluffs that players choose to play unconventionally, and honestly, a lot of the time it certainly works, and just goes to. I mean, aggression is like a real key to these low stakes live games. It's like sometimes you look at all the dead money out there pre-flop and you squeeze with like a garbage hand and you just win like $100.
Yeah. So
and this is sort of the same thing.
Always squeeze with 9 deuce suited is the moral of the story.
Sometimes you're blocking pocket nines.
Jesus. All right, so
okay. I mean, a really interesting hand, and I see a rationale for folding very easily too, just because it is live. This player is not particularly bluffy, and we are blocking a lot of the draws. So
yeah, but like it's off. I've heard it said like you're just not supposed to make big folds in live poker, and like folding an overpair isn't usually a big fold, but I kind of think in that specific spot it might have been.
Yeah, and I just think specifically 40 big blinds deep.
Yeah,
that might be a little bit too much of a big fold. But I don't really know what I'm talking about, so
that's true. Well, what's this next hand?
Yeah, so next hand is going to be the same game. It's 1-3 at Encore. In this hand, we are going to be about 475 effective, so playing quite deep, and it is once again no straddle on, so a bit over 150 big blinds. So let's see, under the gun is going to open to 15. And then there are 3 callers, and I look down in the big blind at king of clubs, queen of spades. The under the gun player is one of these players. He was not the same player as in the previous hand who was sitting to my left. This is a different player. He was opening quite a lot, so I saw a good opportunity for a squeeze here with all the calls behind and holding king queen. Yeah,
I mean, king queen, like offsuit, a lot of times it really sucks to play post flop.
Right.
I'm not like super excited to play an enormous pot with it, but I do think that trying to take down this dead money is perfectly reasonable. So I'm on board.
Yeah, I agree, and I just really didn't want to call and play out of position against 4 opponents.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you might be able, like, is king queen off like gonna play? Like, are there, you're getting 1,000,000 to 1. Like, you don't really have reverse implied odds with it. That's the one reason I might call, is because it doesn't really have reverse implied odds, whereas a lot of these, like, borderline flatty, like, like king or like queen 3 suited, or that's a bad example, like queen 7 suited, maybe, like, is a hand with bad reverse implied odds. So just, like, calling can like really screw you over if you're very deep. So maybe you'd rather play that as a squeeze.
So you mean queen 7 suited, where if you hit your queen, there's just so many better queens, or more in the flush over flush scenario?
I think both.
Yeah,
both the things. But here, like, you're not really going to make a flush, and also you're not going to get like king over king or even queen over queen. So I think it's like probably an okay hand to just flat, but I also think squeezing.
Yeah, and I would say if the under the gun player, if it was an under the gun player who was opening a super solid range, and then their range actually was tighter under the gun, I probably would not be squeezing as much. But
then you're worried about like ace king,
right? So then I mean you might even be correct to like make a super tight nitty fold out of position, like,
or just three bet fold for value, or like,
yeah. So that's so I make it 100. It's over an open and 3 limps out of position. It's about where it should be.
Seems fine.
Yeah. Figure they're gonna do the job a whole lot of the time. And to my surprise, the only caller is a flatter in the cutoff.
That's going to be fun. I think I'm going to predict he has a small to medium pocket pair.
Yeah, and this particular player was definitely a loved to call. He had called a lot of streets. I saw him call over. I saw him make a lot of interesting plays, a lot of pretty loose calls on flops, on turns. Pre-flop for sure. He also just, I think, it was very interesting because he did raise some hands pre-flop, but he also flatted pocket kings multiple times pre-flop. So, I'm not sure how he was making his decisions, but he liked to call.
Maybe he could have like an offsuit Broadway type hand here too, like king jack off or something like that.
He could.
Okay.
He could.
So
there is about 245 in the pot. We're going to have about 375 behind. And the flop is going to come out ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, 6 of diamonds. So ace, queen, 6 with 2 diamonds. We've got black, king, queen offsuit. So we flop, second pair, best kicker. And I don't know. What do you like doing here? Do you think this is a good c betting board for value?
Yeah, I think he doesn't have much ace x here. Like, what ace x does he have?
Well, that's interesting because I thought really he has a lot of ace x here. Like, this is the sort of player who just loves ace x.
Interesting.
Who might be double flatting with like a bad hand, like even ace x offsuit, but definitely like a lot of ace x suited.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess you can have like at least all the ace x suited. I don't know. But here's the thing, though. If you think about his range, like this is the thing about like, yes, there are hands in his range that are better than yours, like random ace x. But like he also has so many worse queens, like all the like random suited queens. He could have like queen jack offsuit, queen 10 offsuit, maybe, queen 10 suited. He also has like a crap ton of small to medium pocket pairs, and all of those hands are going to give you action.
Yeah, and I do elect to bet. I kind of agree. I think, it's an ace high board. I have second pair, but also like, we can also probably get like folds from some hands that have pretty decent equity against us. Well, I guess there aren't that many hands that are. We're probably not getting folds from flush draws, and like king jack doesn't really have good equity against us actually. So yeah, just getting value from worse is the primary objective.
Yeah, I think you can get value from worse. I think you don't always have the best hand here, but you can definitely get value from worse. So I'd bet. Does he call?
Yeah, we bet 80, so we bet about a third pot. It's a very favorable board, and he doesn't think too long in calls. And as I said, I think his range can definitely be pretty wide here, but especially once he calls, I still am kind of thinking that he has a lot of ace x in his range, but probably has some amount of queen x and some of those pocket pairs, although getting value on future streets from those hands will probably be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that you're going to get another street of value, and I don't know that you super want to even try. I mean, you don't have the strongest hand in the world, but okay.
Yeah, so now there's about 400 in the pot, and we've got roughly 300 behind.
Okay.
So we're off to the turn, which comes the deuce of clubs.
Brick.
The quintessential brick. And do you just want to kind of check call here, check fold, check evaluate? What's the plan here?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking like almost certainly check, but then, we get such a big brick. I mean, the problem is really like the pot's like 400. There's not really a size that we can bet that would allow us to like bet fold.
Although I would say this player is probably never. If I bet, the player would never be jamming worse.
Okay.
But he could certainly be, like, he's obviously going to have a lot of better hands to call with, and so we'd have to kind of think about. I don't think he'd really fold better either.
Yeah, I mean, right? Yeah, of course not. No, it's interesting. Like
I don't want to turn my hand into a bluff and try and fold out. Sorry, go ahead.
This is really the awkwardness of a hand like king queen offsuit. It's like, well, we kind of made our hand, but it's like meh, and we don't really have any equity to improve.
Yeah, I mean, but there's not. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not that common with king queen. Like, it's like there's one overcard to king queen. So if you make your pair, it's usually top pair.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I'm just more of like the offsuit aspect of it. Like, you really can't. There's no like nutted capability here. Like, you're basically just sitting here. I mean, I don't know. I think it's pretty hard to imagine that you can get stacks in against a worse hand.
Right. Well, I think that's fair.
The question is, do you want to go for a second street of value at all? And if you do, would you rather do it now or on the river? I don't really think the river makes any sense. I think well, actually, that's not true. I guess if you're trying to get value from like worse queens and pocket pairs, the river might be better. Versus the draw is like Jack 10 and King Jack, and that's it. So, and I mean diamonds obviously, but so I guess there's like also a lot of draws out there that you could get value from. I don't know. What did you do?
Well, I wound up checking, and he actually checked it back.
Oh, okay. Well,
and in the moment, I definitely don't think, and even looking back, I don't think that precludes him from having an ace. Like,
okay.
I think because like he might be, I mean, you know how players are, and I've certainly been guilty of this, is where you think, well, he checked, I have an ace, but he could certainly be pot controlling with ace king, or
Sure.
But if you're in position and somebody checks to you on this board with an ace, you might check it with a kind of a weak ace. Not that you'd put yourself in this position by double flatting like a huge 3-bet, but there's certainly merit to checking back aces here for pot control.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on the player. Like, versus a guy like this, if I'm him playing against him as you, I would attempt to get stacks in with any ace, because it sounds like this guy is just so passive. So, but yeah, I see your point. He can check back an ace here. So.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it does go check, and the river comes the 10 of spades.
Okay.
So
Jack
King
10.
Jack does get there. Queen 10 is now beating us, and pocket 10s makes a set. But other than that, I mean, so now we've got 300 in front of us. The pot's about 400. Do you think there are enough worse hands that we can throw in like $100, try and really go for like super thin value once he checks back the turn?
Yeah, I think we could probably bet fold for value here, and I think making a small like $100 like block bet type sizing is good. That's what I would do. I think I'd bet 100.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I was really kicking myself as I did not do that in the moment, because why would I do that? I check, and he did pretty quickly check back and show pocket jacks. So definitely one of the prime hands to make that $100 from. I was like, damn, like. I mean, it kind of goes back to our conversation last week, how thin is too thin. And yes, I'm going to value own myself sometimes against like him shaking his head and calling with ace 5, but I'm also going to get called by like queen jack and queen 9 suited and jacks and probably 9s and stuff like that.
Probably 9s.
So
yeah, you got to go for that thin value.
I mean, we'd probably have to think about what his actual, what his range consists of and which hands. I mean, it really depends on if he's playing like offsuit aces, or if he's really focusing on suited aces. Because you never know when people are going to call with offsuit aces.
But even if he has a bunch of offsuit aces, like, assuming he doesn't have literally all of them, like, I think that this is probably still profitable to just bet.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, betting like a quarter of the pot, like, you're really not value owning yourself for a whole lot more if you are running into it. And you're probably getting called, like, always by worse value.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was definitely kicking myself.
Like, it's definitely exploitative play to bet fold like that there. Like, I would say that against a good player, a lot of them are going to sniff you out there, but this guy is not that, it sounds like. So
No, and I know. But, you really don't want to put yourself in this position against a good player, like playing a marginal hand out of position in like a bloated pot. But, that's what happens when you squeeze with king queen offsuit.
yeah.
So, gotta go for value once I make that play. So just another hand where I was like, damn, there was value to be had. There's value in them thar hills.
So I've got one here, which was just like an awkward multi-way spot. We love those on Bankroll Burners. So I would like to go through this with you.
Perfect.
So we are playing 2-5. No straddle is on this hand. I think the straddle was in this particular game. There was almost never a straddle on. Yeah, so I'm in the cutoff this hand, and villain 1 is 240 effective, and villain 2... So villain 1, who is the low jack, is 240 effective, and villain 2, who is the button, is 400 effective. So we're 80 big blinds effective with the button.
Okay.
And villain 1, the low jack, opens the pot up to 15. The standard open in this game, which is best bet orange park, 2-5, 500 cap. The standard open in this game, it's very table dependent. Some tables are 15, some are 20, some are 25. This table was 15 by and large. So no sizing tell here. Villain 1 opens to 15. I make it 45 with ace of diamonds, 8 of diamonds. This is a hand I would mix in flatting and raising with.
And we're in the cutoff?
We're in the cutoff. I really don't have like a particular reason why I would flat or raise. I just chose to raise this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those hands that's it's on the weak side, but I just 3-bet king queen offsuit, so I'm not gonna play.
I mean, no, for sure. I mean, I would say like the idea of 3-betting it here against like this open from the shallow player isn't amazing, because it's it's going to be hard to play a 3-street game versus such a short stack. But I did think there was a decent chance I would take it down pre-flop, and I did also want to get the button out of there. I wanted to play in position, which obviously did not work because the button pretty quickly cold calls my 3-bet. And then the low jack completes there.
Oh boy.
Now I'm like pretty unhappy with my hand.
Yeah, yes. That makes sense because the pot's now 140. One player's got 195 and one player's got 355. So now we have like a weak ace. Like, our ace, if we hit an ace, it might be no good. And or then if we hit an 8, it might be no good. If like we hit an 8 as top pair, it might be no good.
This is like worst case scenario for 3-betting this marginal hand. So
yeah, it's getting a cold call from the 1-up player in position on us.
Yeah. So
but hey, I'm quite familiar with bad scenarios for 3-betting marginal hands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's probably at these depths, like I probably should mostly play it as a call, so it's on me. But I don't think it can be that bad in 3-bet. Anyway, we go to a flop.
Yep.
And the flop is Queen of Clubs, 10 of Diamonds, 9 of Diamonds.
Ah, so we have a combo draw here.
We do. I would say our straight draw is pretty bad.
Yeah, I know for sure it's pretty bad, but it is equity.
Yeah. Well, I think we have some reverse implied odds with this straight draw. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say yeah. I'm going to say something stupid, so I'm just not going to say it.
Yeah. So I'm like, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the board all in all, I think. But
I mean, we have the nut flush draw.
Yeah. So my question here is, well, first of all, should we bet? It's check to us, the low jack checks. Should we be betting? And if we're betting, what kind of sizing should we be taking, considering all the different players' stack sizes? This is like so complicated, I think.
This is like a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because this smashes the button's cold calling range.
Absolutely. The button should have all sorts of 2 pairs and sets and straights.
Like pocket jacks, which is just like, he's never ever laying down. Like this is kind of an issue where the low jack is the shallow one. And, like, I would probably be fine trying to, like, get it in with the low jack, but I'm not convinced. Like, I don't really want to... I don't know that we want to play for stacks with the button.
Right. I mean, there's the trick here, which I always want to do live and never, like, remember to, but, like, betting the perfect amount so that if low jack then jams, we can reopen the action. So
right.
Like if we bet button calls, low jack jams, we can rejam. So, but I don't know if I want to do that with his hand.
Right, because then we'd basically bet, and then we're giving the button like insane odds is the other thing, right? Because we bet 95 would basically be it, right? Because they have, or we bet 100. The button calls, the low jack jams for 200. We rejam for like 350, and then the button only has to call 250 to win like 700.
Yeah.
Like the button is probably not folding the hands that he flatted the original bet with because he's getting better odds.
Right. No, absolutely. And so I didn't want to do that. I would think I would normally size up on a board like this because it connects with my opponent's range and I have a strong draw.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to size up too big because I didn't really want to induce a low jack jam. Like I had the same thought you did. I was like, I don't think it's very good here if the low jack jams. So
is there any merit to like over betting and betting like 200 and like just trying to fold the button out and get the low jack to like just call, or folding them both out? Like,
was like a tournament play, like bet to take the pot down? I don't know.
Because like I absolutely agree with you that, I mean, this is definitely a board where I'm interested in polarizing, and we have a strong draw. And by the way, I actually as I think about it, I do think the straight draw is going to be pretty good most of the time, because if we are like betting, like our opponents aren't going to have that much random king X, like except for like king queen,
right?
So like and especially like if we're betting to take it down, like. Or if we bet and they call, like their calling range they're not just going to call us with a gut shot.
Sure.
With like a random king. So that's kind of one, or even like king 10, king 9 in this, if things go crazy multi-way, like I don't think they're going to be, so are you interested in checking here?
I don't know. I mean, maybe we should try to play this as a check raise because our draw is so strong. Like, I don't know. What I ended up doing was betting a third pot, which I think is probably not very good, but it's what I did.
So we bet 50?
45.
45. Yeah, I don't know, because also if we get it in three ways, like we also if the thing is, right, if we were to bet 100, right, and the button calls and the low jack jams, like once this action is taking place, like we are going to have the odds to basically stack off against both players because we have the nut flush draw, right? There's no reverse implied odds with that draw,
right?
So that's kind of the one spot where like, yeah, we and against like the button, we also might have the best hand if he's got like king X of diamonds, which is not super likely. But
it's possible that we kind of do just want to get stacks in here. I think that is possible. I think that like maybe that first line we talked about, like betting 95 so that the button cold calls, the low jack jams, we can rejam and just get money in with like probably a lot of equity.
It's a weird thing where actually this particular hand actually doesn't really suffer in any way from playing against two opponents. Because like it's not like we have showdown value that's vulnerable. It's like regardless, we're going to have to hit 9 outs twice. But if we hit those outs, we are probably best.
Right. Yeah. And we are going to be best sometimes when we just make our straight. So, I don't know. I really think that there were sort of a lot of interesting ways to play this hand. I think betting a third pot is probably not great.
And I don't really think we can bet a third pot. Again, just range. I mean, I would just say range-wise. I know kind of default to betting a third pot, but I've tried to move away from that on certain boards. And it heads up exploitatively, but multi-way, like on a board like this, I don't know that betting a third pot is... there's just, I don't know. It just really smashes their ranges more than it does ours. But anyway, you bet a third pot, totally.
I think ultimately I like either a check or a very large bet.
Yeah, and I don't mind check jamming, absolutely. But as is, we bet a third pot, and I mean we do have piles of equity, so I'm sure it can't be bad.
Yeah, well, button calls and low jack does get out of the way. So
okay,
heads up now.
Okay, well, I mean that's good. So we're now heads up with the button, who's the deeper one, right?
Correct. The button covers.
So we're now 230 in the pot, 310 behind.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
And the turn is a brick. It's the 5 of spades.
Okay.
I decide that I need to continue betting as a bluff. And I think that the story is a lot more... I don't think the story is that compelling that I have something that strong, just because if I feel like if I had something strong, I would have bet larger on the flop. So I actually think like I'm doing a bad job telling a story here. Like I think this is just classic bankroll burners play here. But I go ahead and bet 100 with the intention of jamming river on most runs.
And we probably do not have the odds to call a jam. Is that right?
With the stiff flush draw,
we'd have to call 2. Well, and I mean, if you think the jack is live, which I mean, if he jams on us, it probably I would probably be inclined to think the jack is live.
So we have to call 200 to win
430.
That's not to win. No, because if he jams, because
you're right, 630.
Yeah.
So it's almost we need 25%, which we're basically getting.
Yeah, I think we do have the odds to call a jam actually.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we bet small. Maybe we can even bet smaller and and fold to a jam. Because like we're blocking all the we're also just blocking the bluffs, right? Because if he jams, I would think we're like certainly behind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think this sort of I'm taking this like kind of in between sizing here.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I feel like when we bet the sizing and he jams, we're just gonna like throw up and be like, well, I literally have the exact odds to call with my 12 outs.
Yeah.
You know, versus maybe there's a way where we bet a little bit smaller and then we say like, okay, now I've left myself just enough to get out.
Right, and then plus we have a more compelling... We can give him a worse price on the river with our bluff jam if it comes to that.
And some of our outs might not be live, right? If he's got a set or 2 pair.
Yes.
He either might have, like... I mean, probably shouldn't. I mean, he could have, like... No, I mean, maybe the queen of diamonds, but if he's got a set, then 2 of our outs are dead. But anyway, again, we do still have a lot of equity. We bet 100, and I do like the idea of betting here and jamming river, because if he calls, he's probably not that strong.
Right. So I don't know. I think betting smaller would be better. I also think like there's possibly some merit to checking here and either playing it as a check jam or, well, the check jam, like we're so not going to have fold equity. I don't know. It's really awkward.
I don't mind betting here, and I don't mind the betting here to set up for a river shove. Is there ever merit to jamming here?
Just open. I don't think it makes sense as a story.
Like I do think we have the nut advantage. Like we really should be the only ones with king jack.
I don't think that's true. I think button can have king jack.
King jack suited. I mean, cold calling with king jack.
We shouldn't have king jack offsuit.
No. I agree, but he shouldn't have king jack offsuit either. But
yeah, I think we can both have king jack suited as played.
We should probably have more pocket queens, but you're right. Probably not an over betty sort of board.
Yeah, I think betting really small is the way to go. So and like probably folding to a jam.
Okay, but we bet 100, and what does he wind up jamming?
He calls.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's generally a good sign, and Ted, I mean, especially with so little behind, probably does cap his range decently.
Yeah, and the river's a nice one. Actually, it's the ace of hearts.
Okay, well, I mean, if he had a 1-pair hand before, then we're probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like we have the best hand here. A lot.
Unless he's basically unless he's got like ace queen or ace queen.
Yeah, I think like
and there's only one combo, and I mean there's not that much ace queen left also.
There's not a lot of ace queen there. I mean, we've got 1 queen accounted for and
2 aces,
2 of the ace,
6
2 of the
combos.
Aces. Yeah, so or 8.
So is the plan? You think we just jam for value? I mean, we only have half pot left, so.
Yeah, that's what I did. I jammed for value.
And I think at this point, I think that's totally fine. I mean, I think we're planning on jamming pretty much regardless, right? I mean, basically, if it bricks off, I mean, if are there any spots where we wouldn't jam? Do you think if we made an 8, like if the turn came and if the river came an 8, do you think we'd still jam? Because he could have queen jack, like queen jack and jacks might be a bigger portion of his range.
Yeah, I don't think an 8 is good.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Do you think an 8 would be a card that we would slow down on?
I think we still need to jam. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, he thinks and thinks and thinks, and he actually folds jacks face up.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, good play from our opponent, I would say. I mean, he he made a nice fold on the river.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, could I have gotten more value in that hand? Like, I really think the answer is yes, like on the earlier streets. I think the river just sort of plays itself. But I think on the earlier streets, like probably trying to get it all in on the flop or, betting small on turn. And then, yeah, I mean, then if we had bet smaller on the turn, we would have made less money. But,
well, I mean, it's interesting because like we wouldn't, our opponent played the hand, put money in when he was ahead and didn't when he was behind. So I don't know that getting more value is necessarily the right way to frame it, when really if we had put money in, we would have done so from behind. Right? If we had somehow gotten it in on the flop, we'd actually be a dog.
No, for sure. I think it's a really interesting hand, and I'm not sure. I think I definitely could have played it better. So
yeah, but it is a really interesting spot, and I think everything we talked about holds at least some value, which is rare. But hey, we both definitely we both ran into some spots once again. I feel like we just had an episode that was about did we open and 3-bet too wide, and now here we are again.
Yeah, well,
now you know how we play.
Yeah, seriously. Well, thanks everybody for wasting another hour with us. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun for us to go through these hands, and we hope it's fun for you to think about these problems and perhaps learn something incorrect to aid in your future losses.
Yeah, we love doing it.
Please comment, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Please tell your friends. For every friend you tell about this podcast, you're a nice guy.
You'll increase our happiness by, incrementally.
Exactly. Think about that. All righty, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks for tuning in.